"Ma'am, you'll need to step back. This is HOA property now." That's what the security guard told me on my grandmother's dirt road. He had one hand on his radio. The other pointed at a line of brand new roofs, rippling like scales across the red Georgia clay. 100, 200, 300 homes marching to the horizon like somebody stamped them out of a mold. I could taste dust, smell fresh asphalt, hear nail guns like angry hornets. Sunlight flashed off windows that didn't belong. Not to me. Not to any Whitfield. But to a homeowners association that decided my family's land was a blank page they could write their name on. I put my palm to the old pecan tree. The bark was cool and rough. My daddy had carved our initials here the summer he paid the last tax bill. "Land is the one thing they don't make more of, baby," he'd said. "Guard it." I did. For 40 years I did. So I smiled at the guard like I would with a student who'd just lied to my face. "Son," I said, "you're standing on my deed." The radio crackled. 3 trucks rolled past in a parade of confidence. A banner on the tailgate flapped. Lakewood Meadows Phase 3. I recorded everything on my phone, the trucks, the stakes, the surveyor tapping a metal rod into the soil, the HOA president Clifford Myers posing for a photo with a developer like they were christening a ship. Have you ever watched a stranger set furniture in your living room? That's what it felt like. Except my living room was 38.7 acres, with a creek that sings in spring and a breeze that smells like pine and rain. Where are you watching from? I ask you now. Have you ever had an HOA nightmare like this? The guard muttered. We've got a situation. I kept filming, calm, focused, not because I like drama, because I had built a quiet, boring, meticulous little thing over decades, a legal trap. And while they hammered dreams into stolen soil, they were stepping into decade, it one careful, expensive foot at a time. They just didn't know it yet. But the first person I needed to convince wasn't a judge. It was me, because a storm like this takes a different kind of backbone. Mine was ready. Or so I thought. What they did next. It was petty. It was public. And it almost pushed me to do something I'd regret. Until I realized the mistake that would end them was already pouring out of their concrete pump. I'm Marjorie Whitfield, 62, retired school administrator. My superpower was keeping kids from setting the science wing on fire and a budget from collapsing on a Tuesday. I bought groceries at the same corner market for 30 years. I still keep a paper calendar. And every April, I dress up, drive downtown, and pay a property tax bill that always felt too high until the day it became a lifeline. This land is not vacant. It breathes. The creek crooks its finger around the north fence line. Iron markers my granddaddy sank in 1954 squat under tufts of wiregrass. My mama's kitchen curtains still smell like ivory soap when I open the safe where I stored her probate papers. And then there's the binder. Lord, that binder. Tabs like a rainbow. Deeds, tax receipts, surveys, Colorado respondents. Every change of address, form, every boundary certification. I call it the fortress. My friend attorney Samuel Drayton calls it belt and suspenders lawyering. He taught me the phrase quiet title. He filed one in 2019 when rumors swirled about developers whispering to the county. We sat at my table with sweet tea sweating rings onto a legal pad. If anybody ever tries you, he said, we aren't building a case, we're opening a case that's already built. I didn't plan a fight. I planned peace. I kept the fence mended, checked the courthouse index twice a year, walked boundaries each spring with my cousin Thomas, tapping the iron, saying the same words we always say, still ours. Meanwhile, the suburb crept closer, like kudzu sneaking over a fence. A strip mall here, a self-storage there. People sold under pressure or out of hope. I didn't. Maybe that made me stubborn. Maybe it made me a target. The HOA didn't see a woman. They saw undeveloped. They saw contiguous. They saw Phase 3 will make the brochure sparkle. And in a county map that still listed my parcel with a vague description, they saw a seam they could pick. They forgot something essential. I'd been trained for crises. I know the difference between noise and record, between gossip and affidavit, Between an email and certified mail, what did I hope for when I retired? Quiet, collards in the garden, evenings on the porch counting cicadas. Instead, I got nail guns, sales balloons, and a newspaper photo of Clifford cutting a ribbon on my dirt. I could have screamed. I didn't. I sharpened my pencil. Because once you can prove, you don't have to shout. I just didn't expect the first clash to arrive with a $250 fine, addressed to me. For a lawn I didn't own. The envelope looked official. Gold crest, Lakewood Meadows Homeowners Association. I opened it with a butter knife while collards simmered on the stove. Violation. Unapproved fencing. Fine. $250 per day until corrected. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. They were fining me for a rusted, hand-strung fence my daddy stretched in 1972, a fence that sat on my side of the line. The letter used my address, to the ranch house a mile away, like they were deputizing me as a member of their fantasy neighborhood. I called the number. A woman answered with honey in her voice and vinegar underneath. "This is Denise, Community Standards." "Denise," I said, "this fence is on Whitfield land. You don't govern it. And even if you did, I'd rather pet a bobcat than ask permission." Silence. Then that careful tone folks use when they think you don't know better. "Ma'am, all contiguous properties are subject to visual standards," the board voted. "The law voted before your board was born," I said softly. "Send me your governing documents and your recorded plats." Click. She hung up. I smiled. An hour later, a pickup truck stopped outside my mailbox. A woman climbed out in yoga pants and sunglasses the size of dinner plates. She filmed my house while narrating like she was on a reality show. "This is the holdout," she said. "She's suing to ruin our property values." Neighbors in brand new shoes slowed to watch, sympathy curdling into suspicion. Karen, energy travels fast. I didn't take the bait. I took notes. License plate. Time. Weather. Humidity. 78%. Smell of cut fescue and gasoline. You think that's extra? Courts like extra. That evening, my pastor called. "Sister Marjorie, people are talking." "Let them," I said. "Truth can stand on its own legs." But the HOA didn't stop at a letter. They pushed a fence line 20 inches over the boundary behind Lot 73. Their landscapers mowed my hay. They stapled, "No, trespassing HOA only," signs to my pecan trees like paper cuts to an old body. I sent certified notices, calm, precise. Samuel drafted a cease and desist that read like a hymn of consequences. Clifford replied through his lawyer with a smile you could hear on paper, a courtesy offer to resolve any confusion with a small settlement. I didn't write back. I recorded another video walking the north line at dusk, fireflies flicking on like street lamps, frogs arguing in the creek. Day 14, I whispered into my phone. Encroachment continues. The next morning, construction crews crossed the flagged buffer of my wetlands and pounded rebar anyway. That's when the stakes changed. Not just legal, environmental, federal. They thought fines could scare me. But the clay they turned up was about to swallow their whole subdivision one permit at a time. And their public humiliation of me? That was step one of something worse. Something that cracked me open and then welded me shut. They started a rumor. "She's cashing out. She doesn't even live here. She's got a hedge fund behind her." I heard it in the grocery aisle, at church, in whispered phone calls that went quiet when I walked by. Denise posted a community update calling me an outside claimant. People clapped in the clubhouse as if a sentence on a flyer could rewrite a courthouse index. Then the petty became surgical. A realtor with a smile like a blade shepherded a family into the cul-de-sac at twilight, stopping near my creek. "Ignore the rumors," she told them. "The HOA has everything under control. The lady is trying to get rich." I watched from the road as the mother ran her palm over a new porch rail. I wanted to run down and tell her a secret. "It's not your fault. You were sold a dream on stolen dirt." Instead, I kept the camera steady and narrated. Lot 12. Showings continued after notice of dispute. Samuel filed the first suit, quiet title order attached, tax receipts, surveys, aerials like pearls on a string. He mailed certified copies to the county, the developer, the HOA, the bank backing construction, and the title insurer. You want to watch a machine stutter? Touch its financing. Meanwhile, Clifford puffed his chest on local radio. We've offered generous compensation, he lied. She refuses to negotiate. The host said, like he was stirring grits, and the lie slid into people's cars on the morning commute. At the next HOA meeting, residents demanded updates. Clifford flashed a slide deck. Phase 3, on schedule. Title review complete. Risk minimal. Someone asked, "Did you verify ownership on parcel 1476 Whitfield?" Clifford waved a hand. Paperwork anomaly. A junior accountant at Hanover Construction flagged acreage discrepancies. Her email leaked the subject line, a quiet bomb. Unrecorded transfer? They ignored it. Then came the public scene that burned. Yoga sunglasses cornered me at the edge of the sidewalk with her phone live on social. "Why are you doing this?" she said. "Why do you hate families?" I'd just picked up a sack of feed for the hens. I was tired, dusty, angry. "Ma'am," I said, "I don't hate families. I hate theft." She smirked. "Tell that to the kids you're trying to kick out." I breathed in. Long. Pine and gasoline, cicadas humming, Daddy's hand on mine in memory, steadying me. "Turn your camera," I told her, pointed at the man who signed a contract on soil he didn't own. She didn't. Of course she didn't. That night, I cried in the kitchen. Not because of her, because I felt the weight of being cast as villain by people who preferred a comfortable lie to a dusty truth. I went to the safe, pulled out a folded letter with an old blue court stamp, the quiet title order from 2019. I pressed the paper to my chest and felt something lock into place. Hard, calm. Noise fades. Paperwork doesn't, so I set the next piece of the trap, wetlands documentation. A conservation baseline I'd commissioned 3 springs ago when the frogs boomed louder than the highway. Photographs. GPS points. A biologist's report with Latin names that would make a developer's eye twitch. Phase 3 had cut across a protected buffer, and federal grants care even less about HOA drama than deeds do. I didn't sleep. When I closed my eyes, I saw roof lines like teeth, biting down. I saw my mother's hands kneading biscuit dough, flour dusting her knuckles, and wondered what she'd say about me becoming a headline. The phone pinged with messages I didn't open. Greedy. Witch. Go back where you came from. Funny how folks assume a black woman whose people are planted in this dirt came from somewhere else. Fear prowled the house at 2 a.m. Like an animal that hadn't eaten. Not fear of losing. Fear of becoming hard. Mean. I don't want to be the person who smiles at a verdict while a mother down the road loses her mind. I wanted justice to land clean. It never does. I brewed coffee and read the Psalms. I wrote a letter I never sent to the families. I didn't put you in this. I will not lie to get you out. Then I wrote the letter I did send to the Army Corps of Engineers, to the State Environmental Office, to the bank's risk department. Precise. Quiet. Heavy as an anvil. Samuel kept me steady. "They'll try to drag you into the mud," he said. "Stay on the record, facts and dates." But offline, life shrank. Friends avoided my pew. Women turned their carts in the cereal aisle like I was contagious. A note slid under my door. "You're ruining lives." I saved it in a plastic sleeve. Evidence is evidence, even when it hurts. Cousin Thomas came by with a sack of tomatoes and a look that said he'd fight God if he had to. "I'll sit in front of the bulldozer," he said. "You won't," I answered. "Because we aren't martyrs, we're stewards, and we're going to win without breaking the skin of this land." Have you ever stood alone against a room? I ask you. How did you keep your voice from shaking? The hardest part was imagining the babies who'd hang Christmas stockings in those houses and knowing I might become the reason their parents pack boxes. I walked the creek at dusk. Dragonflies stitched the air. A barred owl asked the forest 5 soft questions. "Lord," I said, "give me a way to win that teaches them not just punishes them. What I didn't know was that the teaching was already underway. In a bank tower downtown, a risk officer read my packet and placed a call. In a windowed office at Hanover, a junior counsel pulled my quiet title order and turned white. And in a county records room, a clerk remembered my face, the lady who still comes in person, and double-checked a plat that had been corrected with a ballpoint pen. The truth was waking up, and when truth wakes, it knocks on doors nobody wants opened. But first, HOA crossed a line that wasn't just property. It was personal. They cut the pecan tree. Not down, just a ring of bark, peeled like a band of skin around its waist. Girdling, it's called. Slow death. Somebody knew exactly what they were doing. I found it at dawn. Sap bled like clear tears. My daddy's carved initials sat above the wound like a witness who couldn't speak. I knelt in the damp grass and felt old grief wake like lightning. Not rage, not yet. A sorrow so pure it made the world silent. I pressed my forehead to the trunk and I promised the tree, yes, I promised trees that I would not let this be the last thing they took without paying. Samuel took photos, measurements, bark samples. This is vandalism, and it will play in front of a jury, like a hymn. I reported it. The sheriff came. He tipped his hat and looked tired. Ma'am, I've got 3 deputies for the whole South End, but I'll file it. His pen shook with the humidity. 2 days later, a certified letter landed in my box. Notice of trespass, Lakewood Meadows Security. They documented me walking within 50 feet of community amenities. On my creek bank, I framed that letter and hung it over my desk like a trophy. Then the physical pressure. Trucks idled at my drive at midnight. A drone hovered over the porch. 3 men in polos stood on the road and treated me like a ghost while they pointed and laughed. Enough, I told Samuel. We escalate. We added claims, trespass, encroachment, timber injury. We attached the 2019 quiet title order and the biologist's wetlands map. We filed for a preliminary injunction to halt all construction across the disputed boundary, and I called a reporter I trusted, one who writes like he's carrying the weight of both sides. He walked with me at the creek. He listened more than he wrote. His story was gentle and sharp at once. Retired educator says 300 home expansion sits on her deeded land. Clifford called it a smear. Denise called it misinformation. The comments section called me every name they reserve for black women who don't bow. Good. Now the light was on, and light makes mold nervous. The next morning, HOA security taped a paper to my mailbox. Videotaping is prohibited. I videotaped the paper and waved to the camera I knew was pointed at me from the model home. If they wanted a brawl, they'd chosen the wrong battlefield. I wasn't going to give them a viral meltdown. I was going to give them a record so clean a judge could eat off it. But pain has its own timeline. The tree started to brown at the tips. And that wound, my wound steered me toward a decision that changed everything. I would not settle to make this go away. I would teach them what land means. In court, in daylight. And the first blow I swung was not a shout. It was a freeze. Banks speak a language that bypasses denial. When the title insurer received our packet with the quiet title order, the core letter, and the injunction motion, they didn't argue. They emailed reservation of rights and then called the construction lender. Within 72 hours, the lender issued a funding pause on Phase 3 draws pending resolution of adverse title claim. That meant no checks. No checks meant no crews. No crews meant angry homeowners asking why their closings were delayed and their driveways were half poured. I didn't celebrate. I watered the pecan and whispered apologies for the heat. The HOA board cracked under stress. Minutes leaked. A director accused Clifford of bulldozing procedure. Clifford accused everyone else of cowardice. Denise wrote an email that will be taught in law schools as what not to write. She's old. She'll fold. I didn't fold. I got allies. Victor and Angela Ramirez, first-time buyers, knocked at my door. No phones out. No posturing. Just 2 people with tired eyes and a baby on the way. Mrs. Whitfield, Angela said. We didn't know. If we'd known. I know, I said. Come in. Have tea. We talked for 2 hours. Victor showed me his closing packet. I pointed to the title policy and the clause that made the insurer quake. You shouldn't lose your home, I told them, but they will pay to make this right. They left with copies of the suit and numbers for legal aid. I watched them walk to their car and felt the anger in me rewire. Less fire, more flint. At church that Sunday, I stood to speak. I won't trade truth for comfort, I said, but I also won't demonize neighbors who were misled. Pray for us all. A cold half of the room looked away. The warm half clapped. It was enough. Samuel smiled at me as we prepared the injunction hearing. You turned the corner, he said. I did, I said. From rage to witness. Then, the county clerk called. Just a courtesy, she said. A supplemental plat had been filed on my parcel 6 months earlier, attempting to correct boundaries and align my creek with Phase 3 drawings. It was signed by a surveyor with shaky ethics, recorded at 4:59 p.m. on a Friday. There it was, the crack we needed to split the boulder. You ready to plan? Samuel asked. Been ready since 2088, I said. And plan we did. Every meeting, every email, every footprint. We mapped a story that a judge could follow without a flashlight. The first strike would be small, surgical, public enough to rattle, quiet enough to look like we were still just defending. But inside that strike? A fuse. We built a wall of paper and facts high enough to make a developer dizzy. Step 1. Chain of title audit. Samuel and I traced every transfer from 1950 to today. We highlighted the quiet title order, the tax continuity, the probate, and then circled the Friday evening supplemental plat, like it was a roach on white tile. Step 2. Survey reconstruction. We hired a clean as a Sunday shirt surveyor, Miss Patel, who runs crews like symphonies. Her team shot the line with GPS, found the original iron pins, and photographed the relocated creek line Phase 3 used. She produced a 36-page report with photos, bearings, distances, and one devastating note. Original monuments intact, recorded correction, inconsistent with physical evidence. Step 3. Environmental baseline. The biologist returned, confirming wetlands encroachment and buffer violations, complete with species logs and a chorus of Latin that reads like judgment. Step 4. Financial thread. We diagrammed the money, developer to HOA special assessments to lender draws to title insurer exposure. We didn't need to sue everyone. We just needed everyone to feel how expensive Clifford's confidence had become. Step 5. Narrative control. I recorded a calm video for the community. I will not break your door frames. I will not shame your children. My fight is with the institutions that gambled with your lives. We posted it once. No comments engaged. Then we went quiet again. Silence unnerves the noisy. Have you ever made a plan so clear your fear had nowhere to sit? That's what this felt like. My house smelled like ink and lemon oil. The cicadas tuned their summer violins. The pecan, bandaged with burlap and prayer, held on. Clifford tried one more stunt, offering me a nuisance settlement and a plaque honoring the Whitfield legacy in the HOA clubhouse. No, I said. My legacy is the land, not your lobby. He smiled, a television smile. You're making blackmail look noble. You're making theft look administrative, I said. We filed our motion for a preliminary injunction with exhibits that looked like we'd emptied a museum drawer onto the court's desk. We asked for a halt to work along the disputed line, the removal of encroaching fences, and preservation of evidence. Then we set the fuse, a narrowly tailored lease pendens, recorded against the lots that straddled my boundary, the legal way of telling the world. There's a fight here. Buy at your own risk. Closings paused. Realtors fumed. The banker who'd paused the draw now paused his sleep. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Residents shouted. Denise cried. Clifford barked about lawfare. In the dark of my living room, I watched porch light moths batter themselves silly and whispered, "You don't have to sprint into the flame." Baby. I wasn't talking to moths. Our first strike landed at 9:04 a.m. on a Tuesday when a county email went public. A stop work notice on 4 lots along my creek for buffer violations. Small. Surgical. But in the HOA group chat, someone typed what we needed typed, "If she can stop 4, she can stop us all." The excavators went quiet. Orange vests gathered in confused little flocks. Clifford stalked the mud, phone to his ear, face blooming red. I parked on the county road, stayed behind the ditch, and filmed with a steady hand. "Stop work order posted," I narrated. "See the stakes? They're inside the buffer. That's not my opinion. That's the statute." 2 hours later, Victor texted from the neighborhood app. "They canceled our closing." A neighbor replied, "Why is this lady doing this to us?" Victor, bless him, wrote, "She's not. The HOA built on someone else's land." Silence followed, then a new tone. "Wait. Is that true?" The board tried to regain control. Denise sent a blast email. "Do not communicate with the claimant." I didn't need them to. I needed them to talk to each other. To doubt. To ask questions they'd been too comfortable to ask. At noon, the bank emailed Hanover. "Advise on corrective plan." At 1, the title insurer scheduled a coverage conference. At 2, the county clerk flagged the supplemental plat for internal review. At 3, a reporter requested to see the HOA's due diligence files. At 4, a young paralegal from the developer's firm called Samuel and said, "Off the record, she's right." Small win? Maybe, but a small win that teaches beats a big win that blinds. Have you ever felt the wheels start to turn in your favor, not fast, just undeniably? The air smells different. Your shoulders lower a fraction. That's how it felt when the judge granted our preliminary injunction, in part halting further encroachment and ordering preservation of my tree. Clifford's tone changed. "Let's be reasonable," he told Samuel. "Reasonable is what people say when a car they swore wasn't rolling suddenly flattens their foot. We weren't cruel. We proposed a path. The HOA and developer buy an easement, where structures already exist, pay damages for trespass and timber injury, and compensate for buffer violations, real money, not plaque money. In exchange, I'd consider allowing continued occupancy while we hammered terms." Clifford balked. "You'll look like a monster on the news." I looked at the pecan bandaged like a soldier and said, "I can live with your camera. Can you live with your record?" That night, the sky broke. Rain banged on metal roofs. The clay turned to red pudding and flowed into the culvert like a wound. Silt fences buckled. Mud kissed the creek. Neighbors filmed brown water barging into a retention pond. And somewhere between thunder and stillness, a file landed on my doorstep, anonymous, in a manila envelope, with a sticky note. You didn't hear it from me. Inside, board emails, cost spreadsheets, a schedule showing title correction after Phase 3 homes occupied. They hadn't just skipped steps. They'd planned to fix the deed after the houses were full. Now that fuse, it wasn't just lit. It reached the dynamite. The leak wasn't just gossip. It was intent. Email number 14. Once closings hit 80%, claimant will have limited leverage. Email number 22. Record supplemental plat. As soon as possible. We'll work out consideration with Whitfield after occupancy. Email number 31. Clifford to Denise. She's old. Her risk tolerance is low. We outlast. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, the kind that used to come when a student lied while staring at my name badge. I set the pages in order, breathed out, and slid the stack to Samuel. He read. He whistled low. This is not just sloppy. This is reckless, maybe fraudulent. We added the emails to our exhibits. We filed a motion for sanctions. We noticed depositions. And we sent a quiet copy to the title insurer. Within 48 hours, they issued a full claim reservation and advised the developer to mitigate exposure. Translation: fix it or pay. Then the phone rang. A reporter from Atlanta. Primetime Energy. Mrs. Whitfield, would you speak on camera? I said yes on my porch. At golden hour. With cicadas singing backup. I didn't perform. I didn't strut. I looked into the lens and said, I paid taxes on this land when nobody wanted it. I mended fence when nobody noticed. I filed papers before anyone dreamed of a pool or a clubhouse. I don't want to see a family lose a bedtime story, but I won't lose my father's initials carved in that tree and pretend that's fine. The piece aired. Balanced. Brutal where it needed to be. The twist landed. Not if it was my land, how they tried to outlast me. The HOA group chat churned like a washing machine. Some doubled down. Some apologized. Some asked where the board had kept their due diligence. Answer: buried under arrogance. Then came the surprise witness. The junior project manager. Remember the one who once flagged my name on the plat? She sat for a deposition and testified. I raised Whitfield ownership in our first scoping meeting. Mr. Myers said we'd clear it later. Later never came. Until later was court. Samuel turned the knife gently in deposition. So the board knew? Yes. Before construction? Yes. And chose to proceed? Yes. Say what you want about legalese. A clean yes can move mountains. Meanwhile, the pecan lord blessed that tree, pushed new leaves above the girdle like hope wearing green. I took that as a sign. We could have justice with mercy. We drafted a settlement ladder. Highest rung buyback of the entire Phase 3 footprint at present market value, to be leased back to residents for $1 a year, while the HOA and developer fix their mess. Middle rung lifetime easements, heavy damages, conservation set-asides, and Clifford's resignation. Lowest rung trial, with a damages claim that would make their grandchildren memorize my name. Clifford sneered at the ladder like it smelled bad. The insurer didn't. They asked for a meeting. Neutral location. No cameras. Just numbers and consequences. We walked in quiet. We walked out with a draft. But last acts need a stage. And the stage turned out to be bigger than anyone planned. Courtrooms have their own weather. The air felt cooled by something more than vents. Maybe it was the collective breath of 96 families held in the same chest. Whitfield v. Lakewood Meadows, HOA, Hanover Construction, et al. The bailiff called it like a roll. We sat where we'd sat before. Me in navy, Samuel with his binder, Clifford with his lawyers, Denise dabbing at her eyes, and neighbors filling the pews with worry and anger and hope vibrating in their hands. Evidence came in like a river. Deeds, receipts, surveys, emails, videos that cursed supplemental plat. The judge's eyebrows climbed an inch with each exhibit. The junior manager testified again. The biologist spoke of buffers and silt and salamanders like a poet with a ruler. Then I spoke. First person. Not a tear. Not a performance. I'm not asking this court to feel sorry for me, I said. I'm asking it to notice the difference between a neighbor and a thief. Neighbors ask. Thieves excuse. Clifford took the stand. His confidence, once a billboard, was now a sagging yard sign. Samuel's questions were calm as rain. Did you verify ownership? We relied on our partners. That's not an answer to my question. Silence. Number. Did you record a plat correcting her boundary without her consent? We believed it was accurate. Was it? It appears not. Did you intend to outlast her? I intended to protect my community. A community you built on land that the quiet title order says belongs to her? I don't recall. The email remembers for you. The judge asked her own questions, measured, surgical. And then, like thunder rolling in slow, she ruled. Title to the disputed property remains with the plaintiff, Mrs. Whitfield. The court finds encroachment, trespass, unlawful timber injury, and violation of environmental buffers. The court accepts the parties' proposed framework, orders immediate cessation of further encroachments, and approves a monitored settlement whereby defendants shall compensate plaintiff for land use through recorded easements and damages, fund restoration of impacted wetlands, and provide a community restitution program. The court further orders the resignation of Mr. Myers as HOA president and refers the matter of the supplemental plat to the district attorney for review. Somewhere in the room, a child whimpered, and a mother shushed him with relief soaked into the sound. Denise cried, not the weaponized kind, the human kind. We didn't take houses from families that day. We took arrogance from institutions. We recorded easements with terms that will outlive both of us. We set aside a permanent greenbelt along my creek Whitfield Preserve, where no one will pour a slab again. We funded a scholarship from their restitution program for kids in the county who want to study land management and law. And Clifford? He signed his resignation with a pen that looked heavy in his hand. He didn't look at me. That's all right. Accountability isn't a gaze. It's a record. Have you ever exhaled so long you forgot what air felt like going in? I did right there in that recycled air courtroom, with my mother's name folded in my purse and my father's initials breathing green outside in a tree that refused to die. That's not revenge, really. That's justice wearing work boots. We walked into sunlight. Cameras asked questions. I gave the same answer I'd give you. Protect what's yours. Protect it early. Protect it quiet. The subdivision still stands. Children still chase each other from sprinkler to porch to couch. Porch lights click on at the same time every evening, as if somebody conducts them. The pool smells like chlorine and sunscreen. Life went on only now. It goes on with a record that tells the truth. We recorded those easements like vows. We restored the creek, pulled the silt out of its throat, and planted willows where the bank slumped. The salamanders came back with a patience that shames me. The pecan threw shade like forgiveness. Once a month, I walk the Whitfield Preserve with a trash bag and a clipboard, because stewardship doesn't end with a verdict. If I see a neighbor, I wave. Sometimes they wave back. Sometimes they look at their shoes. That's all right. Healing has its own calendar. Victor and Angela brought their baby by. We ate pound cake at my table and laughed about how bureaucracy can scare the soul out of a person. They brought me a photo of their first Christmas in the house the HOA told me I'd never touch. On the back, Angela wrote, "Thank you for protecting what's right." I put it in the fortress behind the quiet title order and before the bank's funding pause. It belongs there. I got letters after the story aired, some from folks in other states, some from folks on my own road. I thought I didn't have a voice. I thought being quiet meant being weak. I thought HOAs were above me. I wrote back the same way to each. You don't have to shout. You have to document and pray and stand when your knees shake. Where are you watching from? I'll ask again. If your HOA or any institution crossed a line, what would you do first? What paper would you pull? Who would you call? Drop it in the comments. I read them. I pray over some. I cheer for more. The last time I visited the courthouse, the clerk smiled like we were old conspirators. "Mrs. Whitfield, you still pay in person?" "I don't like blang. Surprises," I said. I drove home with receipts warm in a white envelope. The sky was huge and blue like a promise. At the edge of the preserve, wind pushed the willows into a bow. I touched the pecan's bark scarred. Yes, but alive. And I heard my father clear as the day he said it. Land is the one thing they don't make more of. Guard it. For as long as I have breath and a binder. And if another HOA thinks maps are suggestions and elders are soft targets, I hope they like the taste of paperwork. Because quiet doesn't mean weak. It means ready. If you found something of yourself in this, subscribe. We tell HOA drama, HOA revenge, Karen meltdown, HOA corruption, HOA justice stories with truth and teeth. And we breathe when we're done, because breathing is what you do when the long fight is finished and the world is still standing. Sometimes justice shouts, sometimes it signs. Mine signed. And it left a green ripple where a bulldozer thought it could erase a name. Script completed.